He had all the territories back in those days, like Memphis and Mid-South and Florida and Atlanta and Georgia, and, in Alabama. He had those little in-the-field training companies. They were a business, but he wasn't paying for them. He was just putting them in there and let them train. But when he put them out of business now, it took him about a year to say, wait a minute, these guys are the shits.
Hello. It is me, your True Hill Phenom SP3. We are back once again, Smack Talk special edition, talking about the top 10 on the Netflix worldwide, number 4 in their first week, Mr. McMahon Netflix docu-series. I am here with the legendary manager, wrestler extraordinaire himself, Dutch Mantell. How are you doing?
Hey, man. I'm doing good. And let me tell you a quick story this week. We were all delayed this weekend. I'm stuck off in this godforsaken Florida with this damn Category 5 hurricane bearing down on me. And it's coming. Here comes the rain. Here comes the wind. So I'm sitting there. And they told us to vacate. Vacate to where? Where am I going to go? It's a peninsula. Where are you going to vacate to? So anyway, if I had left, I wouldn't have went north. I'd have went south toward Miami to get away from it. They didn't tell anybody that. I guess nobody thought about that. But I thank God everybody's okay. The house is still here. But so are those people, and I know these people up in western North Carolina and eastern Tennessee. The whole town is gone. Now, who would have thought that a tropical, it starts out as always as a tropical disturbance down in the Gulf. Now, who would have thought it would go as far north as Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, or Asheville, North Carolina, and literally take towns out? But it did. So, and I was reading on it. They said, "Oh, well, that's the results of climate change." I said, "They get the fuck out of here! Damn, blame everything on climate change or whatever you're pushing. It's the 500-year storm. They've had these storms before. They don't come along." I wonder what they told about it 500 years ago. Was it the 500-year storm then? I doubt it. But anyway, I'm here and I'm ready to go.
You think you know all the wrestling stories? There's more you haven't heard yet. Join us on Backstage Pass.
Yes, we are here to talk about the Mr. McMahon documentary that dropped on Netflix on September 25th. Like I said at the top, it is in the top 10 on Netflix, ranked at number 4 in the number 3 in the United States and number 4 worldwide on Netflix. So it's getting a lot of play, not just by wrestling fans, but outside of the wrestling world as well, telling the whole story of Vince McMahon's rise through the ranks as the promoter, founder, owner of WWE, and then into his allegations and dismissal, if you will, and 2 resignations from WWE that we've seen over the past 2 years. What was kind of your overall thoughts on the docu-series, the 6-part docu-series that's on Netflix, and your overall thoughts on how it portrayed Vince McMahon, being that you are someone that has been able to work with him?
Well, it didn't really, only a very few of those in there, of those instances and stories they told, and that I hadn't heard before. Nothing is new, nothing is uncovered. The only thing that was new to me, and we were just talking about it before we went on the air, it was when Vince and Shane were talking about doing something with the business, and they were eating, and Vince reaches over there and hands him the knife and said, "Here, stab me right in the heart, because that's the only way you're going to have to kill me to make me do that." I'm thinking, get the F out of here. He ain't going to have to kill you to get you to do something. Great story, but I just don't believe it. But yeah, it was. But what did strike me is very, very little time was spent on the Janelle Grant incident. Very few. Now I know that Endeavor, they own it now, and they may not want to get that out there. But do I believe everything Vince says? I don't believe nothing Vince says, to tell you the truth. He's a promoter. He's a booker. He's in the wrestling business. So, and whatever he tells you, and I learned this a long time ago, take it with a grain of salt, because throw it over your shoulder or whatever you do with it. But no, I don't believe a lot of this stuff. He has an answer for it, and it may seem logical, but do I believe him? No, I don't believe him. I hate to say that, but I don't.
And he kind of admitted that during the documentary. I think one of the more telling lines that he said was when he was talking about his competition with Ted Turner in WCW. And he kind of, like, his whole gimmick the last 30 years since the whole rivalry with WCW has always been that WCW were playing dirty by offering more money to their talent to bring them over, the likes of Hulk Hogan, Macho Man Randy Savage, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, and they were trying to hurt his business, and he would never do something like that. And I love the producers of the Netflix documentary asked him, he was like, well, isn't that kind of what you did in the 80s when you went to all the different territories and got them? And he was like, well, it's different because I was just trying to compete. He was trying to put me out of business. And he was like, then they questioned him and was like, no, it's kind of the same thing. He was like, well, I say things and I don't really mean them. So you kind of, I can say one thing and then feel a different way. So basically, he's basically saying that I'm lying and I'm a hypocrite.
Yeah. So basically, you could just dispel everything that he says because he wasn't trying to hurt anybody. He was just telling the story. Yeah, Vince is. I don't believe anything he says. Tell you the truth, and because the wrestling business is just. I hate to say this, but it's just a bunch of liars in there. They will tell you what you want to hear, or enough to get you off their back to where they can get away from you for a while. And he's been a part of that business for 50 years. So he's not going to change all of a sudden now because Ted Turner comes in. But what he did, of course, now he has to draw a line in the sand. What they did, they were trying to put him out of business. But what he did, he was trying to compete. Compete with who? If you put everybody out of business, who are you competing with? Nobody. So anyway, it's a bunch of shit. But interesting. It's an interesting interview, and I didn't hear all of it. I heard some of it. I'm gonna go back and listen to all of it, but I've heard most of it anyway by little nit bits here and nit bits there. So, but what do you think of it?
Overall, I thought it was good for a new viewer, someone who's not a professional wrestling fan. I think they would have learned a lot from it. Like the first couple of episodes, I really, as someone that, you certified me as a wrestling historian, I basically heard and seen all these stories, and I've heard the same people tell these stories, whether it's, the rise of WWF and him going with Hulk Hogan. I did, and you're someone that's also, worked with Hulk Hogan throughout your career. I did find it great that Hogan finally told the truth about something, because there's been the long rumor was always that Hogan was the one that went to Vince McMahon when Jesse the Body Ventura, before WrestleMania 2, was trying to create a union with the wrestlers backstage at WWF. And for years, Hulk Hogan has always denied it. And then here in this documentary, he was like, yeah, I was loyal to Vince. So yeah, I went to Vince and I told him, hey, these guys are trying to, boycott you, said they're going to sit out WrestleMania 2 and they're going to create a union. And that's how Vince was able to go to each wrestler and was like, hey, if you show up to that meeting that Jesse's doing, you're fired and stuff like that. Basically pressured everybody to not go ahead with the meeting that was going to create a wrestlers union. And then here we are 40 years later, and there still isn't any type of wrestling union, and that could have changed the business completely. But I was like, Hogan lied about that for 40 years, and then he finally admitted it here.
He lied? Actually lied? No, but people used to ask me, said, why don't you guys get a union? I said, hey, that's a great thought. But where are they going to work? Because you only got really one guy controlling the business is Vince, and you're doing union, he's not going to take you because you're going to be a bad egg. You're going to cause problems, and he'll just leave you at home. So what are you going to do? Bag groceries, sell cars, drive a truck? What are you going to do? I mean, you can't get in the business then and run up down the road and get people to listen to your bullshit. But no, it's just not going to happen. And Vince is, you got to give him credit. He is the reason that wrestling is as big as it is today. I don't think anybody else would have had that foresight, would have had that long-term vision that Vince had. And now when you look back on it, what year did he get into business? He's older than I am, so.
He got into the business around 1969. Yeah, 1969 is when he first became like a ring announcer for the WWF.
Well, 5 more years, he would have been in 60 years. So he is wrestling, basically. And a lot of people said, why do you guys hate Vince so much? I said, we don't hate Vince. We just knew what he was doing. Because he damn sure didn't have the wrestlers' welfare in mind when he started trying to take over the country and run all the mom and pops out. He didn't give a shit about the wrestlers. And he admits in the documentary, he doesn't play fair. He admits that, right?
Yeah.
So, and I don't know, Vince is just, he's a work of art without the beauty. Let me say that. So.
Where were you kind of like working in like
in jail, impersonating a wrestler?
Well, in the 1980s when Vince, I love that. When Vince did his whole big expansion and was getting the certain talent from all the big territories, where were you at around like 1982, 1983 after he purchases WWF? Memphis?
Yep.
So who was like the top stars that he took from y'all?
We took Lawler, took Jimmy Hart, and I don't know who else he took. But basically, those were the top people he took. And I don't think Sid was in Memphis then, but he ended up taking Sid and, Junkyard Dog, but he's from Louisiana. So what he did was, let's say Mid-South. And Mid-South had the stars like Duggan, had Junkyard Dog, Jake the Snake, DiBiase. Where did they all end up? With the WWF. Because when you go in there and you take their top talent, when they tune in their weekly show, that is a Bill Watts show, that talent is not there. And then they tune in to the WWF show, there they are. So he took them away. Now, and everybody knew that that's business. But he just went in there and because money talks and bullshit walks. We know that. And I don't think that is playing dirty, but he damn sure had a lot more money than these regional promoters had. And they're not going to throw all that money away. And because Vince had the money I guess he had more money than the regional promoters did. I'll tell you that. But anyway, when they would tune in on Saturday, Vince had all the stars, not only Mid-South, but Florida. He took Dusty. He took, all those other guys he took the Road Warriors, And what he did was, and this is where I say sometimes Vince is not as smart as we all think he is. If he just waited a little bit, he wouldn't have needed NXT, because he had all the territories back in those days, like Memphis and Mid-South and Florida and Atlanta and Georgia, and, in Alabama. He had those little in the field training companies. They were a business, but he wasn't paying for them. He was just putting them in there and let them train. But when he put them out of business now, it took him about a year to say, wait a minute, these guys are the shits. He said, I got to train them somewhere. And that's what got started the training centers, more or less. Like he started in Memphis first, and then he ends up in Ohio Valley. And I think he had one in Atlanta, and then that moved to Orlando. But now he's just got one, right? He just has it in Orlando, right? NXT.
Yeah.